Let's kick things off with the big headline coming out of Cupertino, California within the last hour or so. Apple unveiling its new lineup of Apple Watches as well as iPads in its first major launch event this year. A number of headlines to note here. Apple introducing a new Apple Watch that monitors blood oxygen. It also announced the launch of a virtual fitness service that will be linked to the watch. It's worth noting that Peloton shares that saw big gains in this session pulled back a bit on that news. Apple also announcing that long anticipated Apple One bundling service that will enable consumers to tap into all of Apple's services, which of course includes music, entertainment, and now this fitness class. Also, Apple unveiling its new iPad as well, the new iPad Air with new colors and designs on that front. Let's kick things off on that conversation with Ray Wang. He is a principal analyst and founder at Constellation Research. Ray, a lot of headlines to get to. What stood out to you, first of all, in terms of the headlines that have come out so far? We should point out that event is still going on.
Yeah, it is definitely still going on here in Cupertino. The watch announcements were really the precursor to talk about how Apple is jumping into health and fitness in a big way. And the Apple One announcement is really talking about the services revenue. And I think those are the important things to look at, is that bundling of services. They've shown a lot of growth in terms of the product lines, in terms of what's happening for the iPad and the iPad Air, what's happening on the watch side, where they've got like 53 to 54% of the market for that type of watch. And so what they're doing is pairing on to the services. And when they tag on to the services, that services revenue growth is going to go from 22% to 33% in the next 24 months. And that's really what people are watching for, is the leading indicator, more devices being sold, this launch happening, and then of course, what's happening with the services revenue.
Ray, when you talk about the services, that's certainly what Apple has consistently over the last few years doubled down on, saying that's where our real growth is going to be in the future. And yet when you look at entertainment, the streaming side, and music, Apple hasn't done as well as its peers. It's all relative, of course, when you look at a Spotify or all the other streaming services that are competitors to Apple. How do you think the bundling of these services allows Apple to further eat into that market share?
I think it helps a lot. Apple decided not to go head on. For example, Apple TV Plus wasn't about trying to take out Netflix or take out Disney Plus. It's an and strategy, not an or strategy. And so by bundling even more services over time, they serve as that marketplace for subscription services at the consumer level. And so what you see, for example, arcade, there's 100 games, right? They actually created the funding to actually allow game manufacturers to come in and provide that as a service instead of having an ad-supported service. And so what we're seeing is the difference in digital monetization models. Apple's basically saying no to advertising, yes to privacy, while everyone else is competing for advertising as opposed to subscriptions. Now, Netflix is the exception there, where they're actually subscription only, no advertising. But you can see how these different digital monetization models are playing out among these digital giants.
What do you make of the price point itself? $15 a month or $20 a month for a family? I mean, that seems like, when you look at all the services that come with it, that's a pretty competitive price point when you compare it to all the other services that are out there right now.
This is back in the age of cable bundling. I think we're in the same kind of, format. They're taking different types of services, bringing them together. This is what they did really well with the iPhone. Like, who would have thought you could have a phone, a camera, right? A video camera and your clock all in the same spot, right? It's the same thing that's going on here as they get into the services business. They're bundling some of those essential services, from health, right, to the ability to actually have the Fitness Plus, right? And then of course your Apple Card is a service as well for what they're putting together.
Let's talk about the Apple Watch. As you pointed out, that's one of the big headlines coming out of this event, the new Apple Watch that monitors blood oxygen. Apple also announcing a partnership, by the way, with Seattle Flu Studies and the University of Washington to research the coronavirus. Certainly very timely headline right now. As you point out, Apple has doubled down, at least on the health sector. How significant are these announcements that came out today, and Apple being able to tap into additional users that maybe haven't come on board with their devices yet?
It's a great opportunity for them to grab more users, to bring them on board. The ability to use that, blood oxygen sensor, especially when we know that COVID-19 is a vascular disease, trying to understand how your blood oxygen levels is going to play a big role. And I think that's part of it. That's a great way to do a prospective study going forward, being able to see how different individuals are reacting to, their COVID-19 experience or how they're avoiding COVID-19. And so I think that, plus the contact tracing they announced with Google earlier during the year in April. I think those two initiatives are actually part of that. But you also see the academic partnerships that are going in healthcare. And I think that's a very interesting piece, with these blood studies, also with heart monitoring, and also with others. Even though they say this is not a medical device and you should consult with your physician, right? They're getting a lot of great data that's going to be able to help with population health.
And finally, Ray, usually at this event in September, we've come accustomed to seeing a new iPhone unveiled. That's not going to happen likely until next month. There are still a number of skeptics out there who are looking at the stock saying, sure, the services narrative is great, but at the end of the day, it still comes down to the iPhone because of the individual price point. I'm curious what you think about that argument and how significant that October announcement is likely to be in terms of the device being a big driver for Apple when you talk about the 5G iPhone that's expected.
Like I said earlier, the device is the leading indicator, but we're entering a super cycle of replacement. If you look at the average iPhone age, we've got 40 to 45% of iPhone users having an iPhone that's 3 to 3.5 years old. And that number is significant because this super cycle replacement is happening at the same time as 5G adoption is coming. And so there are 400 million phones that are available that potentially will be part of that replacement cycle. And that's a huge number for Apple.